Ladies and gentlemen, today we must discuss a difficult and uncomfortable truth. Why do men leave good women? This is not an easy topic to navigate, but it's one we must confront for the sake of understanding relationships and personal growth. First, let's recognize a key aspect of the male psyche, our perception of self-worth. The truth is, many men leave because they don't believe they're worthy of a good woman. This isn't a reflection of the woman's value or qualities, but rather a reflection of the inner struggles men face. If a man feels inadequate or unprepared to meet the expectations of a relationship, he may create distance as a defense mechanism. This brings us to the fear of vulnerability. It's a truth many men find hard to accept, but there is a discomfort in showing vulnerability. Men are often taught to suppress their emotions, to be strong and stoic. But that same suppression can lead to emotional isolation and disconnection. Without the ability to express themselves, men may find it easier to retreat rather than engage in the necessary emotional labor that relationships demand. And then there's the issue of control. It's not that men are inherently controlling, but rather that control can become a coping mechanism for feeling out of place or threatened. In relationships, control often manifests as a desire for dominance, to dictate terms or avoid compromise. When that sense of control is threatened, it can lead to withdrawal or even the end of the relationship. Fear of responsibility also plays a crucial role. Relationships are demanding, requiring time, effort, and a deep sense of accountability. For some men, the weight of these responsibilities can feel unbearable, and they will leave rather than face the discomfort of stepping into the role of a committed partner. Unresolved trauma is another force that cannot be overlooked. Many men carry emotional baggage that hasn't been dealt with, sometimes for years. This trauma can prevent them from fully engaging in a healthy relationship, leading them to retreat when things get too intimate or vulnerable. Then we have the issue of perception. A man may leave because he believes there's something better waiting for him. This is not necessarily a reflection of dissatisfaction with the woman in question, but rather an illusion of belief that there's a better fit out there. The truth is, this perception often stems from an inability to confront the reality of what a lasting, meaningful relationship requires. Expectations, those elusive, often unspoken dreams we carry into a relationship, are another stumbling block. Men and women often have vastly different expectations of love and companionship. If a man feels that these expectations are unattainable or unfair, he may abandon the relationship rather than face disappointment. Personal growth is another aspect that cannot be ignored. People grow, change, and evolve, sometimes in ways that no longer align with their partner. When a man's path takes him in a different direction, whether it's in his career, values, or personal goals, he may feel the need to leave in order to preserve his sense of self. Alongside that, a lack of appreciation can erode the foundations of a relationship. Men need to feel respected, valued, and appreciated. When those needs aren't met, it's easy to see why a man might begin to withdraw and eventually leave. Let's talk about emotional immaturity. Men, especially those who have never learned how to confront their emotional challenges, might leave simply because they don't know how to deal with conflict. Rather than facing the discomfort of a difficult conversation, they may opt to avoid it altogether, often leading to the end of the relationship. We must understand that when men leave good women, it's not because the women aren't enough. It's because the men themselves are struggling with internal battles, whether it's insecurity, fear, trauma, or simply a lack of maturity. Relationships are complex, and they require two people who are willing to confront their flaws, grow together, and meet each other halfway. Until then, the cycle of leaving, retreating, and searching for something else will continue. Perception of self-worth is a critical factor in the dynamics of relationships, especially for men. For many, the idea of being enough, of being worthy of love and respect, is not something that comes naturally. Men are often raised in environments where vulnerability is perceived as weakness and emotional struggles are dismissed as signs of inadequacy. This leads to a subtle but profound belief that if they don't measure up to societal expectations, whether in terms of career success, financial stability, or personal achievement, they are not deserving of a supportive, loving partner. When a man feels deep down that he is inadequate or not enough, it can create an emotional barrier between him and his partner. This perception can drive him to sabotage relationships before they become too serious, not out of a lack of love or care, but because of the fear that, at some point, his partner will see him as unworthy. This is not about the woman's actions or character, it's an internal struggle within the man. He may find it easier to leave rather than risk exposing his vulnerabilities or confronting the painful truth that he doesn't feel worthy of the good things that come his way. This lack of self-worth may also lead to feelings of guilt or shame when the relationship is good, but the man still feels restless. He might struggle with the belief that such goodness is fleeting and that, in the end, he doesn't deserve to experience it. It's an insidious cycle. The less he feels worthy, the more likely he is to pull away from the relationship, even when his partner is fully invested and committed. This leaves him feeling unfulfilled and his partner feeling confused or rejected. The issue of self-worth is deeply connected to the way men see themselves in relation to their partner. If a man cannot reconcile his internal struggles and embrace the truth that he is deserving of love and support, it becomes difficult to build the foundation needed for a lasting relationship. This perception of self-worth, shaped by internal insecurities and societal pressures, can often dictate the course of relationships, leading to heartbreak and feelings of abandonment, even when both individuals are trying their best. Fear of vulnerability is one of the most profound and complex emotional barriers men face in relationships. It stems from a deep-rooted fear of being exposed, judged, or rejected. Many men are conditioned, either by societal norms or their upbringing, to believe that vulnerability equates to weakness. From an early age, they are often taught to be tough, to keep their emotions in check, and to handle things on their own. This message is reinforced by the idea that being vulnerable, expressing fear, pain, or uncertainty is a form of failure. As a result, many men learn to suppress their emotions and mask their true selves behind a facade of strength or indifference. In the context of romantic relationships, this fear can be debilitating. A man who is afraid to be vulnerable with his partner may struggle to open up about his thoughts, feelings, and fears, even when he knows that doing so would strengthen the relationship. Instead, he might retreat emotionally, withdrawing from his partner at the very times when closeness and intimacy are needed most. This emotional distance can create a sense of isolation within the relationship, even though both partners are physically present. The fear of vulnerability also manifests in the form of avoidance. A man may avoid addressing conflicts or difficult emotions, not because he doesn't care, but because he is afraid of the vulnerability that comes with confronting these issues head-on. He may convince himself that silence or withdrawal is the safest option when, in reality, it only deepens the divide between him and his partner. This avoidance can lead to resentment, frustration, and feelings of disconnection, causing the relationship to suffer over time. When a man feels vulnerable, he often fears that he will be judged or criticized by his partner. The prospect of being misunderstood or not having his emotions validated can feel incredibly daunting. This fear of judgment can prevent him from fully expressing himself, even when his partner is open, understanding, and supportive. The man may internalize this fear, convincing himself that he must remain emotionally distant in order to protect himself from potential rejection or criticism. The fear of vulnerability is also tied to a lack of self-acceptance. Men who have not learned to embrace their own imperfections or who carry unresolved emotional wounds from past experiences may find it even harder to allow themselves to be vulnerable in front of someone they care about. The idea of being seen as imperfect, flawed, or emotionally needy may be so intolerable to them that they would rather avoid intimacy altogether than risk exposing those parts of themselves. Fear of vulnerability can lead to a breakdown in trust, communication, and emotional connection in a relationship. It creates an environment where both partners are left guessing, unable to fully engage with each other on a deep, meaningful level. The man, unable to shed his emotional armor, may start to pull away, not because of a lack of love or care, but because he's afraid of what being vulnerable could mean for his sense of identity and self-worth. In this way, fear of vulnerability becomes both a cause and a consequence of emotional distance, preventing the man from experiencing the full depth of connection and intimacy that a relationship can offer. The desire for control is a powerful force that can influence behavior in relationships, and for many men it becomes a deeply ingrained aspect of their identity. This need for control doesn't necessarily stem from a desire to dominate or manipulate others, but often from a need to feel secure, stable, and competent. Men who feel uncertain about their lives or sense a lack of control in other areas may project that need for certainty into their relationships. They might attempt to control aspects of their partner's behavior or the direction of the relationship itself as a way to feel more grounded or less vulnerable to external forces. For some men, the desire for control manifests in small, subtle ways, perhaps through micromanaging daily decisions, imposing rigid expectations, or dictating the terms of the relationship. For others, it can be more pronounced, resulting in patterns of behavior where the man insists on having things his way all the time. This can include controlling how time is spent together, the decisions made as a couple, or even how their partner should behave. The underlying desire is often not malice or ill will, but rather a deep-rooted fear of instability or a lack of confidence in their ability to manage the complexities of life. Control can also stem from a desire to protect oneself from feelings of helplessness. Men who have been raised to see themselves as providers, leaders, or protectors may carry a burden of expectation that causes them to exert control over their environment, including their relationships. If they perceive the relationship slipping out of their control, they may react defensively, tightening their grip on certain aspects of it. This can involve becoming overly protective or, in some cases, withdrawing emotionally when things aren't going according to plan. The need for control can also arise from insecurity. When a man feels uncertain about his own worth or fears being judged by his partner, he may attempt to exert control as a way to maintain a sense of superiority or competence. He might feel that if he doesn't assert control, he will be seen as weak or inadequate. This belief stems from the misguided notion that being in control equals being strong and capable when, in reality, true strength comes from being able to let go and trust in the relationship and the other person. The desire for control often creates an unhealthy dynamic in relationships. The more one person seeks to control, the more likely it is that the other person will feel stifled, disrespected, or undervalued. Control is inherently at odds with trust and partnership. A relationship built on control is one where both partners are not free to express themselves fully, to make mistakes, or to grow together. Instead, the controlling individual may feel that their partner is merely an extension of their own desires rather than an equal participant in the relationship. This can result in resentment, frustration, and emotional disconnection. The desire for control can be driven by fear of the unknown. Some men fear the uncertainty of life and relationships, so they try to preemptively shape every outcome to their liking. This fear-based approach to relationships leads to a lack of flexibility, and when things inevitably don't go as planned, the man may withdraw, become frustrated, or leave the relationship altogether. Control, in this sense, becomes a way to try to eliminate the discomfort of uncertainty, but ironically, it often causes more harm than good, pushing the very connection and intimacy they seek to preserve further out of reach. The desire for control in relationships is rooted in a deeper fear of vulnerability and inadequacy. When a man feels unable to trust himself or his partner to handle the unpredictability of life and love, he may seek to impose rigid structures in an attempt to maintain control. However, the truth is that true strength in a relationship comes not from exerting power over it, but from allowing both partners to grow, change, and evolve together with mutual respect, trust, and understanding. When a man can let go of the need for control, he creates the space for a healthier, more balanced relationship where both individuals can thrive. Fear of responsibility is a deeply ingrained emotion that can affect many men when it comes to relationships. Relationships inherently demand a certain level of commitment, accountability, and emotional investment, all of which can be overwhelming for someone who struggles with the weight of responsibility. For some men, the idea of taking on the full responsibility of a relationship, whether it's emotionally, financially, or in terms of time and effort, can seem daunting and even terrifying. From a young age, many men are raised to be self-reliant, to solve problems on their own, and to focus on their individual success. The pressure to become someone. In the eyes of society, whether it's through career achievements, financial success, or personal accomplishments, often fosters a mentality where relationships are seen as secondary or burdensome. When faced with the reality of a committed relationship, a man may feel as though the demands placed upon him exceed what he's capable of managing. This fear can manifest in a variety of ways. One of the most common forms is avoidance. A man may shy away from serious conversations about the future or avoid making long-term plans with his partner. He might deflect discussions about marriage, children, or the trajectory of the relationship, fearing that these conversations will only highlight his reluctance to fully commit. Instead of embracing the responsibility that comes with being a partner, he may withdraw, creating emotional distance as a way of protecting himself from the weight of these obligations. In many cases, this fear of responsibility is not necessarily about avoiding the responsibilities themselves, but about doubting one's ability to handle them. Men who have internalized the pressure to do it all may feel unprepared for the magnitude of what a deep, committed relationship entails. They might fear that they won't be able to meet their partner's needs, that they won't be able to provide the stability, support, or love required. This can be especially true for men who have faced challenges in their own lives, whether financial struggles, a history of emotional turmoil, or a lack of positive role models, leading them to question their capacity for responsibility in a relationship. There is also a fear of failure that often accompanies the responsibility of a relationship. Men might feel that if they take on too much responsibility and fail, they will not only disappoint their partner, but also damage their own sense of self-worth. The thought of being seen as incapable or weak by their partner, or even by themselves, is a deeply unsettling fear. This fear of failure can lead to a kind of paralysis, where the man avoids making decisions or taking on responsibilities because he doesn't want to risk messing up or letting his partner down. Another aspect of the fear of responsibility is the fear of losing one's freedom. Relationships require compromise, emotional investment, and time. For some men, the idea of sacrificing their independence and autonomy is intimidating. The idea that a relationship could place restrictions on their time, energy, and personal goals is enough to make them hesitate or retreat. This is especially true for men who have not yet reconciled the idea of balance between their personal ambitions and their relational responsibilities. The fear of becoming tied down can push them to avoid deepening the relationship, even when they care deeply for their partner. This fear of responsibility is often exacerbated by a lack of emotional readiness or maturity. Some men simply aren't prepared to take on the demands of a relationship. They may not have developed the emotional intelligence or coping mechanisms to handle the ups and downs that naturally arise when two people are sharing their lives together. Instead of leaning into growth and development within the relationship, they might retreat when things get challenging, thinking that it's easier to walk away than to face the emotional work required to build something lasting. Fear of responsibility in a relationship can cause a significant emotional divide. When one partner fears the weight of responsibility and the other is seeking emotional commitment, there can be a mismatch in expectations that leads to frustration, disappointment, and a sense of abandonment. The partner who is ready for commitment may feel as though they are carrying the entire relationship on their shoulders, while the man who is afraid of responsibility feels overwhelmed and inadequate. The key to overcoming this fear is developing a healthier mindset around responsibility. Rather than viewing responsibility as a burden, it should be seen as an opportunity for growth, connection, and shared fulfillment. A man who can embrace his role in the relationship, who can learn to trust himself and his ability to navigate the complexities of partnership, will find that responsibility is not something to fear, but something that strengthens the bond and creates deeper intimacy. Relationships, after all, are not about perfection or having all the answers, but about learning to grow together, taking on challenges side by side, and supporting each other through the ups and downs that life brings. Unresolved trauma is one of the most significant and often hidden factors that can affect a man's ability to maintain a healthy relationship. Trauma, whether stemming from childhood experiences, past relationships, or other emotional wounds, has a profound impact on a person's mental and emotional well-being. For many men, the scars of past trauma remain unaddressed and buried beneath layers of defense mechanisms, making it difficult for them to fully engage in the vulnerability, trust, and emotional intimacy that are necessary for a strong relationship. Trauma can manifest in various ways: emotional numbness, avoidance of conflict, or a tendency to shut down when difficult emotions arise. A man who has experienced trauma may struggle to recognize or articulate the underlying issues that are affecting his behavior. Instead, he may exhibit patterns of self-sabotage or emotional withdrawal, unconsciously pushing his partner away even when he deeply cares for them. This can lead to confusion and frustration for the partner, who may feel as though the man is not fully present or invested in the relationship, even though he might be doing so out of a deep-seated fear of being hurt again. For many men, unresolved trauma manifests as a fear of intimacy. Past experiences, whether involving emotional neglect, betrayal, abuse, or abandonment, can create a deep-seated belief that closeness equals pain. They might avoid being too emotionally open with their partner, fearing that they will be vulnerable to future hurt. The idea of letting someone in fully, of exposing the parts of themselves that are scarred and tender, can feel terrifying. Rather than risk being vulnerable, some men will distance themselves emotionally, either through silence, withdrawal, or emotional shutdown. This can leave the partner feeling rejected or confused, as though they are being kept at arm's length for reasons they cannot understand. Unresolved trauma can also impact a man's ability to trust. Trust is the cornerstone of any relationship, but for someone who has been hurt in the past, whether by a parent, a previous partner, or life in general, trust can feel like a fragile and dangerous thing to offer. The fear of being betrayed again often overrides the desire to connect on a deeper level. This fear can be so ingrained that the man might not even realize it's driving his actions. He may assume that the worst will happen, that his partner will eventually leave or betray him, and so he prepares for this by emotionally withdrawing first. This cycle of withdrawal and mistrust can prevent the relationship from deepening, leaving both partners feeling emotionally distant and disconnected. Another common effect of unresolved trauma is emotional volatility. Men who have experienced deep pain or loss may have difficulty regulating their emotions, especially in stressful or vulnerable situations. When faced with conflict or difficult conversations, they may react with anger, defensiveness, or emotional shutdown, all of which are ways of protecting themselves from confronting the pain they carry inside. Rather than engaging in open and honest communication, they may lash out or withdraw, making it hard for their partner to reach them. This can lead to a cycle of conflict where neither party feels heard or understood, further reinforcing the man's belief that relationships are fraught with pain and disappointment. Unresolved trauma can result in a lack of emotional expression. Men, especially those who have been taught to suppress their feelings, may struggle to express their emotions in a healthy and constructive way. Instead of communicating their needs or concerns to their partner, they may bottle up their feelings until they reach a breaking point. This can lead to outbursts of anger or frustration that seem disproportionate to the situation, as the underlying trauma has never been properly addressed or processed. The inability to communicate emotionally can make it difficult for the partner to understand the root causes of the man's behavior, leading to feelings of confusion and helplessness on both sides. The impact of unresolved trauma is also felt in the man's sense of self-worth. Trauma can cause a person to feel broken, unworthy, or flawed. These negative self-perceptions can cause him to doubt his ability to be a good partner, leading him to pull away from the relationship to avoid disappointing or hurting the other person. The belief that he is not worthy of love or happiness may push him to sabotage the relationship before it gets too deep. He might think that by leaving first, he can protect both himself and his partner from inevitable pain. This fear of rejection or inadequacy rooted in past trauma can prevent the man from fully investing in the relationship, keeping him stuck in a cycle of emotional isolation. The road to healing from unresolved trauma is a long and often difficult one. It requires not only self-awareness, but also a willingness to confront the past, seek therapy or counseling, and learn new ways of coping with emotions. Unfortunately, many men avoid facing their trauma because it brings up difficult emotions or memories they would rather forget. However, the longer they ignore or suppress their trauma, the more it affects their relationships and their ability to connect with others. For a man to break free from the grip of unresolved trauma, he must be willing to face the pain, understand its impact on his current relationships, and take responsibility for his emotional health. This is not an easy task, but it is essential for growth and healing. When a man begins to address his trauma, he can start to build healthier patterns of communication, emotional expression, and trust in his relationships. He can learn to be more vulnerable, open, and emotionally present, ultimately leading to deeper, more fulfilling connections with others. Only through this process of healing and self-discovery can he truly let go of the past and embrace the kind of relationship that offers love, support, and mutual growth. Perceived better options refer to the belief that there is someone or something better out there, leading a man to question whether his current relationship is the best possible choice. This perception is often influenced by societal pressures, the allure of novelty, or the temptation of idealized alternatives. When a man starts to believe that there might be someone who better meets his needs, whether emotionally, physically, or in terms of lifestyle, he may begin to doubt the value of his current relationship. This mindset can cause dissatisfaction or restlessness even in a good partnership. Rather than appreciating what he has, he focuses on what could be, potentially leading to a breakup or emotional distance. This belief can also be exacerbated by the presence of social media, where the portrayal of perfect lives and relationships can make reality feel less appealing. Ultimately, the idea of better options creates a fear of missing out or settling, prompting him to leave, even if the present relationship offers stability, love, and connection. Personal growth and change can drive a man to leave a relationship if he feels that his own development is being hindered or that he has outgrown the relationship. As individuals evolve, their values, interests, and goals may shift, leading them to seek environments that align better with their current identity. A man who is focused on self-improvement, whether through career advancements, new life experiences, or pursuing different passions, might feel that his partner or the relationship is no longer supportive of his growth. This can create a sense of stagnation, where staying in the relationship feels like holding himself back. If he believes that remaining in the relationship would limit his potential, or that his partner doesn't share or support his vision for the future, he may decide to leave in search of greater fulfillment and personal evolution. In some cases, the fear of being held back by a relationship can outweigh the emotional attachment, pushing him to prioritize his individual growth over the partnership. Lack of appreciation is a significant factor that can cause a man to leave a relationship, especially when he feels his efforts, contributions, and emotional investment are overlooked or taken for granted. In a relationship, both partners need to feel valued, respected, and acknowledged for their actions and support. When a man continuously gives his time, energy, and love, but doesn't receive acknowledgement or gratitude in return, it can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. Over time, this lack of appreciation can erode his sense of self-worth and his commitment to the relationship. He may start to question whether his sacrifices are truly recognized or if he's just being used. If this feeling persists, he may decide to leave, believing that he deserves to be with someone who recognizes and values his contributions, or he may feel that the emotional effort required to continue the relationship is no longer worth it. Emotional immaturity refers to the inability to handle emotions in a healthy, responsible way, and it can significantly impact a relationship. For some men, emotional immaturity manifests as an inability to communicate effectively, handle conflict constructively, or express feelings in a mature and balanced manner. They may avoid difficult conversations, become defensive when challenged, or resort to childish behaviors such as sulking, outbursts, or emotional shutdowns. This lack of emotional regulation can create tension and frustration in a relationship, as their partner is left to manage the emotional fallout. Over time, this pattern can make the relationship feel unstable or unfulfilling, leading the man to leave, either because he feels incapable of meeting the emotional needs of the relationship or because he is unable to emotionally grow within it. Emotional immaturity can stem from unresolved childhood trauma, a lack of self-awareness, or a failure to develop necessary coping skills, and if not addressed, it can ultimately lead to the breakdown of the relationship.